about to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. 1-877 Dali, 1-877 DOCDALI. So sometimes you need to cut to cure, and boy, are they cutting. RFK Jr. has made an announcement that the HHS is going to be reorganizing their multiple divisions to make a new organization called the AHA, I believe it's Administration for Healthy America. All right. I'm just learning this as we go, but the Administration for Healthy America is going to hopefully be less bureaucracy, less government, and more focused. That's the aim. So we have a couple quotes from him. He says, we are realigning the organization with its core mission and our new priorities in reversing the chronic disease epidemic. He wants to, quote, eliminate an entire alphabet soup of departments and agencies while preserving their core functions by merging them into a new organization. They say that this AHA is going to save at least $1.8 billion. That would mean jobs get cut. From what we understand, about 10,000 jobs may be cut. This is going to be in addition to the 10,000 employees that have already opted for the retirement. So this would reduce their overall headcount from 82,000 employees to 62,000 full-time employees. They're going to reduce their 28 divisions to 15 and merge them into the new AHA. They're also going to have the number of regional offices to 5. So Reuters reported that scientists at the FDA, I guess, who work on reviewing the safety and efficacy of medical devices and tobacco products are going to struggle to meet their deadlines. We're being told that those departments are not going to be affected. So this is interesting. Let me see if I have any more statements from them, because so let's say they say the Administration for Healthy America is going to merge the several different offices and administrations into a unit that handles issues like maternal and child health, HIV, AIDS, and environmental health. They said, we aren't just reducing bureaucratic sprawl. We are realigning the organization with its core mission and our new priorities in reversing the chronic disease epidemic. I'm trying to see what else I want to get any more. I apologize. The cuts will not impact drug, medical device, or food reviewers or agency inspectors. So can the HHS do their work with 20,000 less employees? Well, remember years ago when there were all these food outbreaks, the FDA said we don't have enough employees, and they had thousands. And so we were questioning, everybody was questioning, well, why do you need even more employees? Now, mind you, it seems like there's a recall every day. I think now we're hearing of a Benadryl recall. There was a coffee recall. There was recently there was because the decaffeinated label was wrong and it was supposed to say caffeinated. You know, if people aren't doing their jobs, you can't just keep throwing more employees at it. Right? There has to be restructuring. There has to be quality assurance. And if this is the Health and Human Services Department, and we have one of the most unhealthy populations on the planet, yes, I think there does need to be restructuring. I don't like the idea of canning and doing massive layoffs. I think the psychology and the morale changes and offering early retirement and then not refilling those positions is one thing. But to can, because the people that are getting canned are the ones who aren't the remote workers who took that deal by February 6th. These were the workers saying, no, I'm on site. I have no plans on leaving. I want to work for the government. And so I'm just not completely comfortable with canning people who want to do a job and want to work. It's rare to find people who want to work. However, if the people getting fired are those that don't want to work, can't come and, be boots on the ground in the lab or at the meetings or in the office space we're paying for, or who are probationary, not from a just newly hired, but from a poor review and work ethic, then yeah, it has to be done. And, Trump even said this is going to take some time because, and Biden said that too, with, his economic issues, where sometimes there's going to be some bumps in the road and it's going to take some time. So if your goal is to shrink the government and to save the taxpayer dollars, you're not going to feel all the glory and benefits right away. That's why Doge has to sooner than later start sending out those refund checks. I think that's going to keep people engaged. And don't just do a $5,000 thing. I would, even if it's a lower amount, do it sooner than later. So people actually see what is the, fruits of this labor. If things are going to hurt a little bit, do they feel any of the benefits now? But say you're going to feel the benefits 10 years from now or 5 years from now, it's not going to help the next election. It's not going to help the average voter who's like, okay, this sucks. So, we're going to find out more details on all the changes. People are saying, oh, he's going to axe the CDC. He's going to axe. No, the CDC is going to exist. The FDA is going to exist. There's still going to be maternal fetal care, HIV care, medical device overviews. The government still has to function. There's one thing that this administration has promised is they're going to get work done, and work is getting done. Just how this is going to look and how quickly can they do it. I love the fact that we have midterms and elections, so you just don't have a leader that's in office for decades and decades on end like Putin. On the flip side, though, it causes people who want to do work and get things done, like what Trump's trying to do. He's trying to run the clock. He's trying to beat out the clock, and it seems like a lot, and it seems pretty fast, but as a physician, we're used to that. Somebody needs surgery. You don't go, well, let's wait until everybody is really feeling it. You're like, okay, we got to fix it. We got to fix it now. So if there's issues and they want to fix it now, I'm trusting that they're making good decisions. So as we know more, we'll share that with you. 1-877 Doc Daliah.
Hi, everyone. If you've been injured in an accident and think you deserve compensation, listen up. We have legal professionals standing by right now. They'll tell you if you have a case and how much it's potentially worth. Call 800-910-7500. That's 800-910-7500. Call now to find out how much your case could be worth.
Advertisement sponsored by Legal Help Center. May not be available in all states.
In a study, it was found that 33% of 44 herbal supplements had no trace of the advertised herb. Don't let that happen to you. Hi, this is Dr. Mitch. If you want to ensure quality, please go to TotalWellness.com. Supplements made for physicians only now available to you too. TotalWellness.com, helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
Self-reliance. It's not a phrase we hear much in our culture these days. It might conjure up images of pioneers, the West, rifles, strapping men, and strong women. But what does it mean for us in today's world? The New American Magazine has just released its latest collector's edition, Self-Reliance, Foundation of Freedom. In it, the New American authors outline the necessity of self-reliance for a free people, tips for self-reliant living, and the importance of not giving up hope. This unique edition includes articles on the self-sufficiency of the founders, preparing for a worst-case scenario, firearms, financial self-reliance, the importance of community, and many other topics by expert writers. Now, for a limited time, the New American is offering a bundle of 3 collector's editions, Self-Reliance, The Great Reset, and Trump World, for just $19.95. Available at shopjbs.org. Visit shopjbs.org today.
back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Doc-Dali, 1-877-DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to you all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Daliah, Facebook, The Dr. Daliah Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So one of my listeners had last week asked, when is Trump going to act on voter ID and mail-in ballots like he promised? And again, I don't get to talk to Trump's office, but I wasn't surprised that we weren't going to see that in the first month or two because he's, trying to fix the economy and the border and all that. Well, he did sign this week an executive order now addressing voter registration, mail-in ballots. So we'll kind of go over that a little bit. And it's drawing, more praise than criticism. I know the ACLU is a little upset about it, but right now Americans are very used to needing to provide proof of identity or their driver's license or their birth certificate or whatever when they go to fly, when they go to buy alcohol, when they rent an apartment. You always have to have your documentation. So we're already, it's not like, the average person doesn't have that because you really wouldn't be able to function well if you didn't have your form of ID, et cetera. You can't get a DOT physical. You can't get medical care. I mean, you can emergently, but you try to go to the doctor or get your mammogram or whatever, you always need to show your ID. You can't get into a hotel or motel without showing your ID. So Americans are already used to, here's my ID. So with voting, yes, now you have to show your ID and proof of citizenship. Not the biggest stretch because we already do that, but it is a huge change in voting protocols because many people haven't had to do that. I'm still blown away that every time I walked into a polling station or a ballot station, I would be, because you always have to pull out your ID for everything. Even to go into Costco, don't you need to pull out your ID to go in with your Costco card? Or your Costco card has to have your picture on it? And we don't need that. What's your name? I'm Lady Gaga. I could be anybody I want to. But I say, well, I'm Daliah Wax, and they look me up. Although that was odd when they said you were cleansed from the system. I'm like, why? Why would anybody cleanse me? What the hell that was? And that was a big, odd occurrence that we've spoken about on the show, and I'll talk about again later. So it is it's just kind of perplexing. It's a head scratcher. While you have to show your ID, where everywhere else you go in America, except when you vote, doesn't make sense. So Donald Trump has made an executive order. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it does obviously, quote, preserve and protect the integrity of American elections. Now, within 30 days of this order, the Election Assistance Commission is supposed to take appropriate action to require in its national mail voter registration form issued under the rules. So it also includes the mail-in ballots, documentary proof of United States citizenship, state or local official to record on the form the type of document that the applicant presented as documentary proof of United States citizenship. Documentary proof could be a passport, could be an identification document compliant with the requirements of Real ID Act of 2005. People are like, oh my gosh, you can't fly without Real ID. It's something we already do. An official military identification card that indicates the applicant is a citizen, a valid federal or state government issued photo identification, so not your Costco card, if such identification indicates that the applicant is a United States citizen, or if such identification is otherwise accompanied by proof of citizenship. The registration departments are supposed to identify unqualified voters. And it goes on in terms of how Homeland Security is involved, et cetera. And they say within 90 days of the date of this order, the Secretary of Homeland Security shall, consistent with applicable law, provide to the Attorney General complete information on all foreign nationals who have indicated or any immigration form that they have registered or voted in a federal, state, or local election, and shall also take appropriate action to submit to relevant state or local election officials. Now, where people are starting to kind of get their panties in a bunch is they're like, wait a second, now this scares illegal immigrants from voting. They don't want to get caught, so they may not vote. But illegal immigrants aren't allowed to vote. Now, what's the gray area is, well, what if you are a green card holder? What if you are, well, if you are a citizen of America, you get to vote. If you're not a citizen, then that gets, our elections are supposed to be for American citizens. Your Nevada elections are only for Nevada residents. I was unable to vote for the Las Vegas mayor. Why? I live in Las Vegas. I live in Clark County. I don't believe I live within the city limits. I didn't even get to vote for the mayor of Las Vegas because there's rules in place where you are only allowed to vote depending on where you are legitimately, ascribed to be. And legally. So, yes, if that happens granularly on the state and local level, it has to happen on the national level. And then in terms of mail-in ballots, the mail-in ballots need to be received by Election Day. Now, according to Fox 59, the order requires that the votes be cast and received by Election Day and says federal funding should be conditional or state compliance with that deadline. 18 states and Puerto Rico accept mail-in ballots after Election Day, as long as they're postmarked on or before the date. Perhaps no state is more notorious for drawn-out vote counts than California, the nation's most populous. It allows ballots to be counted if they are received up to 7 days following the election, as long as they are postmarked by Election Day. And, they say most California voters cast ballots they receive in the mail, and they say that the state has this reputation for dragging on and that the counting takes forever. And in fact, in December, we didn't know, I guess we didn't have a final tally on what was going on with some of the congressional districts until December 10th? Okay, that allows there to be room for fraud. Maybe I'm old school. It makes sense for Election Day to be the day when you find out who is going to be your president or your congressman. Now, somebody could say, yeah, but the mail-in ballots, the proxy votes. Prior to COVID, we had this down. I understand with the Bush-Gore election, that took time. Remember, we had these Chads and is that what they were called? And Florida, it was all up to Florida, and they had to, recount, and it was so close. So I get, in some instances, we might not have known. But we didn't have, the mail-in ballots were a fantastic resource for people who were sick, for people who were overseas, doing a military tour. But the volume was not enough, usually, to change an election. And the mail-in ballots had, I believe, in some states, postmarked by a certain day so that we got it by Election Day. And so these are things that can be done. I understand there might be a rare circumstance where somebody who wants to vote will not be able to, with early voting and mail-in ballots, do it until the exact day. Like, let's say they leave the hospital. But you see, those are far and few between. We changed things in 2020 where now it's millions of votes. Well, you can't do it that way. It's impossible to guarantee the integrity. And so if you are going to do mail-in ballots, then you might have to start them a week early. I mean, if you really, really want mail-in ballots to be the majority of the ballots, and you really want them to be now traditional form of voting, rather than you going to a booth, closing the curtain, which you used to, now people are voting And you could see everybody else's screen. It's not private at all. So I understand why a lot of people are like, you know what? I like my mail-in ballot. The problem is my family doesn't get our mail-in ballots. In fact, my son got his mail-in ballot after the election. What? So these mail-in ballots are a cluster in a seventh. Remember 2 years ago, a post office in Baltimore had hundreds of mail-in ballots from the 2020 election at one of their offices. This 2 years after the election. So, yes, I do think things need to be done and things need to be streamlined better. 1-877 Doc Daliah. Hi, guys. Dr. Daliah here. Addictions can sneak up on us and come in many forms, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, video games, porn, or something less obvious, such as food, internet, or shopping. Addiction can seem innocent at first and then evolve into an insurmountable evil. In our book, Addiction Basics, Caitlin Kalikas and I dive into the common addictions and provide tips for identifying and preventing these before they sneak in and take over our lives. Addiction Basics can be found on Amazon or my website, drdaliah.com. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Daliah, 1-877 DOCDALI. So, with the measles outbreak, there have been some discussions online and on news outlets of how there have been some studies looking at vitamin A. And I had spoken to you guys about that study where they looked at the measles course in individuals, and a twice-a-day dosing of a certain level of vitamin A appeared in this one study to help minimize the severity of measles. Well, CNN is reporting that some measles patients in West Texas are showing signs of vitamin A toxicity. Now, it could be because people might be trying to treat themselves. CNN is blaming medical misinformation. Now, at Covenant Children's Hospital in Lubbock, CNN is saying, and that's near the outbreak's epicenter, several patients have been found to have abnormal liver function on routine lab tests. Now, you could have abnormal liver function from measles. You could get that from mono. So you could have abnormal liver function tests from hepatitis, from just having the virus itself. But they believe it's also a sign that some people might have taken too much vitamin A. Well, you could check for vitamin A levels if you have to. Now, they said that all hospitalized children with the toxicity were all unvaccinated. Now, people have been going up against Robert F. Kennedy Jr. talking about vitamin A, saying it might work as, I believe, preventative, but overuse of vitamin A can be dangerous. And so, this can happen. I understand. There's a lot of people, and I'm not going to say that people don't treat themselves. I see a lot of do-it-yourselfer sort of, because people have such high deductibles thanks to Obamacare. They don't go to the doctor. They're afraid to go to the doctor, and so they want to do it themselves. And I see this all the time. In fact, I had a patient who had noticed he was bleeding in the scrotum. We think it was one of his varices or veins that somehow eroded into the skin, and he was bleeding. And he said his wife wanted him to get an antibiotic online. Go in. You need to go in and get treated. An antibiotic is not going to stop testicular or scrotal bleeding. So I get that people want to do it yourself. A vitamin A toxicity, taking too much vitamin A, can accumulate in the liver. It could cause dry skin, eyes, blurry vision, bone thinning, other skin issues. And so nausea, vomiting, headache, dizziness, irritability, muscle incoordination. Vitamin A toxicity is dangerous. So we don't want people indirectly poisoning themselves. So this measles outbreak is not a big surprise. We have seen measles outbreaks before. There was a measles outbreak at one of the migrant facilities last year in Chicago. There was a measles outbreak that had stemmed from international, a group of individuals at Disneyland, and then it spread to Americans a few years back. So measles outbreaks happen. I think there was another measles outbreak at a detention migrant facility 2 years prior. So one of the best things to prevent measles is obviously the MMR vaccine. But the MMR vaccine has been very controversial. Many individuals do not like what they've read about in terms of side effects. I don't believe MMR vaccine causes autism, but as I said, there have been neurological side effects very rarely reported to vaccine because of vaccines. So a lot of parents are fearful that, giving their child the vaccine. When a parent is fearing giving a child a vaccine, they're not like the media wants to, portray them as loony and crazy. And, they're trying to make a judgment, trying to make a choice and a best decision, the best decision for their child. I vaccinated my children, but I got to tell you, I prayed every time they got it. Now, when one of my children was 4 months old, I brought him in to get his vaccines, and the nurse practitioner, the nurse practitioner came in, and one of the vaccines was this pretty rose color vaccine. And I go, "Oh, that's a pretty one. Which one is that?" And she says, "That's the MMR." I said, "You don't give the MMR to a 4-month-old. You give the MMR, they have to be a year. And then their second dose is at 4 years, year to 12 months, 12 to 15 months, the first dose, 4 to 6 years is the second dose." But I told her he's only 4 months. So she goes, "Oops, my bad." And after that, I was like, you know what? I'm going to oversee all the vaccines. I'm going to draw them up. I'm going to have somebody give it to them. I was pretty shaken up about that. And so, are some of the side effects because the wrong vaccine is given? Remember with the COVID vaccine, some kids were overdosed on it because the techs didn't calculate the right amount of micrograms to give? I mean, come on. So no wonder parents are a little concerned. Now, my children did receive the MMR vaccine. They and I'm glad they did. So they wouldn't get measles, mumps, or rubella. I don't like those illnesses. I especially don't like polio. We had a family member die of tetanus decades ago. So yes, make sure my family gets their tetanus. Definitely don't like hepatitis. So our family has been vaccinated. Well, especially my kids. But I do understand whenever a parent is concerned, because it is scary to bring a very healthy child into a doctor's office and then have something. It's not in our animalistic instinct. If you go up to your dog and say, "I need to give you a rabies vaccine," are they going to be like, "Oh, goody"? Yes. No, they're going to probably fight. And my cats, oh my gosh. Meow! Look, okay, you need the vaccine. Stop it. So, but if people are thinking that they could just vitamin A it, if they get measles, that can be a concern. So we have had studies where vitamin A can play a role. But as I said, we have to do something with the whole do-it-yourself issue. And part of that gets blamed on Obamacare. It's not that people are just being cheap. Their deductibles are really high. If they go to an urgent care, it's hundreds upon hundreds of dollars. If they go and see their medical provider, It's money. It's money up front. And it used to not be like that. You could go to the doctor and get a bill. Well, now that medical debt is now not considered something that could affect your credit, you can't even walk into the doctor's office without paying cash up front because they don't want you to go into debt because they won't be able to collect it. So you now have to pay up front. You're seeing a lot of doctors say pay now. So a lot of people are saying, you know what? I'll use vitamin A. It's not an antiviral. So we do have a demand for people looking at how they could do things, get natural immunity, treat themselves with natural products, and not necessarily be reliant on the pharmaceutical industry. And I appreciate that. It's just there are big, bad, deadly things. In the olden days, before we had antibiotics and before we had vaccines, people died. I bring up polio because imagine how scary that is, kissing your kid goodnight. They have a couple sniffles, and then they wake up the next day paralyzed or dead. That was one of the scariest things. So talk to your medical provider about your risks, but please don't be using vitamin A without the supervision of a medical provider. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH.
Hi, everyone. If you've been injured in an accident and think you deserve compensation, listen up. We have legal professionals standing by right now to answer your questions for free. They'll tell you if you have a case and how much it's potentially worth. Call 800-710-5100. I'm here with spokesman John Wolf. So, John, tell our listeners who should call right now.
Well, Maria, first off, thank you for having me join you to answer the listeners' questions. Now, as far as who should call in, anyone who's been injured in an accident and think you deserve compensation, give us a call right now and find out how much your case is potentially worth. Call 800-710-5100.
Thanks, John. You heard it, folks. If you think you deserve compensation, call now to find out how much you qualify for. 800-710-5100.
Advertisement sponsored by Legal Help Center. May not be available in all states.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems. For example,
diesel fuel cetane levels.
The cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
In a study, it was found that 33% of 44 herbal supplements had no trace of the advertised herb. Don't let that happen to you. Hi, this is Dr. Mitch. If you want to ensure quality, please go to totalwellness.com. Supplements made for physicians only now available to you too. totalwellness.com, helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So many people are questioning why we have so many cases of autism, so many cases of attention deficit hyperactivity, so many issues with our kids. And one thing that has been suggested is if we're not thinking, or studies are not showing that it's vaccines or that it's cell phones, or, although some studies are suggesting, but that's a whole nother story for a different day. then maybe there's something happening to kids in the womb. Is there something we're doing different decades later that we did from previous generations that could be now affecting kids? Why do we have 1 in 36 kids on the autism spectrum? Why do we have rising cases of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder? Why do we have increase in prematurity, increase in childhood obesity, childhood diabetes? Is there something happening fetally? Well, we do a lot now with maternal fetal medicine. Thank God. We have ultrasounds that can examine the babies. We have ways to treat moms when they are suffering, like hyperemesis gravidarum, where they are vomiting so much that sometimes they need IV fluids and supplemental hydration. Luckily, my nausea vomiting wasn't that bad. I actually used some homeopathic Ipecac. My family medicine doctor partner in my clinic had said, why don't you get some Ipecac? And that worked amazingly. And I only had to take 1 dose and my nausea went away. So I'm a big fan of homeopathy. But when it pertains to a pregnant person, we have to be very, very careful because whatever we take affects baby. And I know there's a lot of debate where people don't think the fetus is alive. It is a live entity. And so we do have to understand that whatever a pregnant woman takes or does can affect the fetus or eventually and the baby. So one thing that has been done very commonly is, give mom a list of medicines that are safe during pregnancy. And when I was delivering babies and when I was in training and taking care of patients, Tylenol or acetaminophen was one of the drugs that was considered completely safe. In fact, they changed the category rating, but at first it was a category A. And just to quickly review the category A's of pregnancy categories. Category A shows that there have been no risk to fetus, no concern, it's relatively safe. Category B is where animal studies are not showing a risk to animal fetuses, but this was not necessarily confirmed in human studies. Or category B, there were some side effects in animals, but we really couldn't confirm that for humans. Category C is where animal studies have shown adverse effects to fetus, and so we're, as a precaution, not going to be using it in humans, especially if we don't have studies. So we're going to play it safe, make it a category C. Category D is where we know there's human fetal risk. And you might, if mom is in dire straits, there might have to be a decision of benefits versus risks, but we'd really like to avoid category D. And the category X, absolutely not. Like Accutane, we don't use category X's because we have a lot of evidence showing those medications can hurt a fetus. And so Tylenol used to be a category A, and then they changed it. Now, why did they change it? Well, I wrote a piece on this where one study found an increased risk of hyperactivity using acetaminophen or Tylenol-related products. Now, when you're pregnant, you get pain, you get headaches, not a lot you could take. So Tylenol was usually on the list saying it's relatively safe, but a study found an increased risk of attention deficit. Another study expressed concern on the fetal kidneys and used caution with its use. Then another study a few years back, published in Nature Reviews Endocrinology, found increased fetal risk of neurodevelopmental, reproductive, and urogenital disorders if mom used acetaminophen during pregnancy and urged patients to minimize exposure. Now, this study came out in 2021. A quote from it is, "We recommend that pregnant women should be cautioned at the beginning of pregnancy to forego using acetaminophen unless its use is medically indicated. Consult with the physician or pharmacist if they're uncertain whether use is indicated and before using on a long-term basis, and minimize exposure by using the lowest effective dose for the shortest possible time." They say we suggest specific actions to implement these recommendations. So now we have another study looking at attention deficit hyperactivity disorder with acetaminophen. So this was published in the journal Nature Mental Health. They said compared with no exposure, detection of acetaminophen in maternal blood during pregnancy was linked with 3 times the likelihood of the child developing attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. They looked at samples from 307 black women, according to Fox News, during their second trimester of pregnancy, tested for markers of acetaminophen. They sampled their placenta after delivery to look for signs of increased inflammation in those exposed to it. And then they followed up with the children when they were 8 to 10 years of age to determine how many were diagnosed with ADHD, and then determine whether the prenatal exposure could have played a role. And they did find DNA changes, related to immune system pathways in the placentas that were exposed to acetaminophen, which is linked to a higher chance of ADHD. Now, this is not saying if you take Tylenol or acetaminophen, your kid is going to have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. The take home of this is everything is a chemical. And I barely took Tylenol. I had headaches. I had migraines. But man, I did showers and cool compresses. I just wanted to take as little as possible. I did take prenatal vitamins, and I did take stool softeners. I had to do that. And then I rubbed this oil. There was a special maternal compound that would prevent stretch marks, and I didn't get stretch marks. My friend Michelle had done it, and she looked great. And she's like, you got it, because she was pregnant at the same time I was. And she had done it for her first pregnancy. And so I used this. Kind of remember the bottle. I forget what it was called, but I didn't get any stretch marks. And it was pretty phenomenal. I just don't know what was in it. And it didn't even smell bad. It smelled kind of nice. But I didn't dye my hair. I was born a blonde, but then the blonde hair fell out, and then I was a brunette. So I am technically a real blonde. It's just I wasn't blonde growing up until I went to the bleach. But I always had been apprehensive about what the fetus could be exposed to. Because when you go back to caveman times, what was the fetus exposed to? Well, fish and nuts and, mom exercising and running around and sleep and weather patterns. It was not red dye 3 or yellow dye 10 or food preservatives or bleach or Clairol or, all of these other things. And so if you have somebody who's in pain and they are, ready to hit medications that are category C, category D, because they're in so much pain, we would then prefer they use something that would be then category B. But talk to your medical provider. We have been, from, when I was in training since the 90s, saying absolutely, you could take, I remember hearing an OB I was training under tell her pregnant patient that she could take all the Tylenol she wants. No, there's liver toxicity. How do you know? Not to mention some of these acetaminophen tablets have colorings to them. So I don't want to scare pregnant people because it's not easy to be pregnant. I had painful pregnancies. It was not easy. It was rough. Couldn't sleep. Couldn't, and not being able to take anything can sometimes make the matters worse. But understand that everything could pose a certain microscopic, effect on the baby. And so talk to your medical provider first, 1-877-DOC-Daliah.
Did you know that healthy arteries make a gas? Yes, actually 3 known gases. Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch, and nitric oxide is a gas that's readily made all day long to keep our arteries open by relaxing the blood vessel walls. By doing this, our circulation is increased, bringing blood, oxygen, and nutrients to every part of your body. Both age and poor diet can lead to a loss of this precious gas, and in turn, blood pressure can go up, energy can go down, and you can get tingling in your hands and feet. Well, our product, Ultimate Nitric Oxide, can easily help fix this lack of nitric oxide. Go to TotalWellness.com. That's TotalWellness.com, where we are helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.